So to get started with Photoshop, I want to talk about one of the most basic things we need to understand. Now, we've learned a little bit about this in Adobe Illustrator, and that is layers, okay? In Photoshop, you have your layers panel here, and you'll notice that right now in this document, I have a few different components to it. I've got the instructions, then I have a tree, a sun, the sky, the bottom, and the top text. All right. And all of these layers interact with each other, but how they interact with each other is fairly significant because whatever is visually on the top of my layers panel will also be visually above anything else. So if I take this tree, I have the sun chosen here, and I put it underneath the instructions, because that instructions panel is at the top, it ends up making it so that the sun will always show up underneath that component, but the sun is also underneath the tree, and so I have the tree and then the sun's coming out behind the tree, and so we are able to kind of see different things like that. Another thing you may notice in Photoshop that works a little different from Illustrator is we're not seeing our transform controls pop up when we grab different layers of our art on our artboard. And I just checked the auto select box, so that way it will automatically just grab something when I select it, okay? Now, the reason it does that is because we have to go one step further in order to actually change the size of things. So just hit the Control T button, and that will give you your transform controls, and now you can resize an object as well, all right? And so anyways, as we do that, we can resize it. We have to hit the check mark to apply that. You'll notice that my object is actually slightly pixelated now, which is one big downside in Photoshop, is now we're working with pixels. And so downside to that is if we're working with an image that has lower quality, we will lose that information when we have that object made too large. It'll get pixelated and it'll be frustrating, all right? So we can start moving these objects around and getting them to be in different places, in different orders. The bottom can be the top and the top can be the bottom. That's fine. But the order they show up in our layers will determine how they lay out. And so while we've already technically learned this in Adobe Illustrator, I wanted to really make sure that emphasis was put on there, because in Photoshop that becomes imperative. In addition to layers, the other thing I want to show you guys is our FX panel, okay? Just because these are some fun things that we can play around with and can kind of elevate our design. So I have the sun, which is actually just a circle with a gradient in it selected. And the FX are at the bottom of the layers panel. There's a few different options down here at the bottom of the layers panel. We can delete layers, we can add layers, we can sort them. The folder is going to be kind of like grouping. We can create a new layer. We can create a mask, which we'll learn about later. And then we also have to add a layer style or an FX, okay? And so what we're going to do is when we click on this here, we can choose amongst a bunch of different things. Maybe I want to have an outer glow on my sun. And you'll notice that now I'm going to get a bunch of different layer style options in here. And I have the outer glow box checked now, and I can choose what I want that glow to look like. It's remembering from when I last was using it. I think traditionally it's going to give you like a multiply, and probably you would want a different color in this case. So we'll go with like an orangey color. We're going to see that doesn't show super strong. If we put it into normal, that'll help. And then we can start kind of playing around with how that glow is going to look and work with our design. And so there's a bunch of different effects that you can apply. You can apply a drop shadow and edit those settings. There's a pattern overlay where it's just going to put a pattern right over your design, and you can choose your pattern. There's preset ones, but you can also bring in your own by clicking here and bringing that in. There's gradient overlays, so it's going to do the same concept, but now it's going to do with a gradient. So, my sun now is actually just a moon or something. And so you can start kind of playing around with these different effects if you'd like. For this little worksheet, what I'm looking for is messing around with the order of things on the layers panel, and also that you were able to apply an effect to each of the objects in this area. So not the instructions or the background, but all the other things should have at least one of the FX applied to them. And so you can kind of showcase the the baseline understanding you may have of messing around with effects. So try out some different effects and apply those, and kind of explore what you can do here in Photoshop.